What's up, Epic 7? I hope you guys are having a great weekend. Today is the day most of you got your 5-star ML unit from that ticket. Unless some of you are holding out hopes that maybe you can wait till Thursday and pick up a Harcetti from it. I'm not so sure that's the way that's going to work, but hey, I'm going to do it too just to see. But hopefully you've gotten a good unit. But this has led to me getting a bunch of questions. A bunch of people saying, hey, is this unit any good? Should I be happy I pulled this unit? A lot of new players don't know if they got trash or treasure. Before I get into that, one of the primary things people want to know is, how do I build this unit? So real quick, I want to go over this. This is in my tips and tricks video, which will be linked in the description of this video. You really should check out that tips and tricks video because it's got some really neat stuff in it. But one of the things that is really good for you to know is if you look at the unit you just pulled, on the gear page, in the bottom left-hand corner underneath the armor is a lightning bolt, shield, and helmet. If you click on that, you can view statistics. Now you get flashbang, so be ready. And you get to see what kind of gear most people are putting on it. You can see the majority of people are running up on lifesteal and a handful of speed and destruction set builds too. Now it doesn't mean it's the only way this can be built, right? This isn't 100%. This is just the 3 most common gear types, with crit set being the secondary set. As for artifacts, you can see the bulk of people are running Golden Rose, with a few people running Draco Plate, and then some even on Proof of Valor. Again, not the only artifacts that could go on her, but it gives you an idea what people like to run. And under stats, you can see on a slide range, right? Most people are not running a lot of attack on her. Most people are running a boatload of defense on her, which makes sense. She's a defense scaler. Some are putting a little bit of health on her, but they're not focusing on health that much, right? This is in the 10 to 12k health range in this area. And speed, between 110 and 270, they're about in the middle. So most people are running her around, 180 to 210 speed range. Crit chance, everybody's capping her out at or near 100% crit chance, and they're running the crit damage up into the, upper 200s, I'd say, based on this range. Nobody puts any effectiveness and barely any effect resistance on her, so this gives you an idea of what kind of gear you're looking for. But if this isn't enough, if you want to actually see how people have theirs built, click on the same icon again, but this time go to Unit Reviews. And under Unit Reviews, you can go up here and click Last 2 months, so you can see most recent builds. Here's one from just back on the 12th. Dank Chickens. He's building his on lifesteal. He said, forget crit set, I want defense set, so I can get high defense. But look at the spread, just like I said, right? 180 to 200 on the speed, 10 to 12 on the HP, went a little higher on HP, smart. Really high on the defense in the 2000s. Crit damage is pretty high, crit chance 100%, and really nothing in effectiveness and effect resistance, just her base stats. Now he's breaking with pattern and going with a different artifact, but to each their own. You can look at kits. Kits running a destruction crit chance Golden Rose version. Very, very consistent with the ones that were shown on the stat arrangement. Here's Chronos with a pen set. Here's C Rules with a speed set. We have a speed set variant on Draco Plate. So you can do this with every unit in the game. Look at how other people have them built. And if you want to go back to be reminded of those statistics on the previous page, it's accessible right here, where you can get flashbanged again and look at it and go, oh, that's right, a lot of people were running speed and crit. That's right, some people were running Draco Plate. Yeah, this is about what I expected for stat layout. It'll give you an idea of how to build your unit. Now, you can always jump in my chat, post pictures of your unit, ask the community, what do you guys think of this build? You can jump in my Discord and do the same thing. Link to the Discord in the description of the video. Always people ready to help out. But if you want a little DIY, all this information is right here in the game to help you build your own units. But now that we've talked about that, how do we rate and rank all of these different ML5 units? Now, I could have made a tier list, but you guys are tier list out. You don't want a tier list, right? You want somebody to tell you, how good is this hero? Where is it used? Is it early game? Is it late game? Is it useless to me? Is it an investment hero? All that kind of good stuff. So let's go ahead and just look at all of the light, all of the dark, all of the 5-star ML units in the game. We're going to go over each one by one. I'm just going to talk a little bit about it, and that'll hopefully help you form a clear picture as to whether or not you did really well or not so good. So we're going to start out with Conqueror Lilias. If you pulled the Dami Mami, congratulations. She is a powerhouse unit. She is good so many places. Now, in high-end RTA and in endgame PvP, she does take a pretty good quality of gear. You're going to want very good speed, 280 plus. You're going to want a lot of HP and a lot of effectiveness. Not the easiest thing for an early game player, but at the early game, she can be used in PvE. Her S3 gives everybody vigor, which makes you stronger and just more dangerous. She puts barriers with her S2. She provokes and pushes back. When she S1s, she dual attacks randomly with somebody on your team. This is valuable in a lot of PvE content. She is a key to a couple of different Wyvern one-shot teams. And when you start rolling into Guild Wars and RTA, you're going to find she's very useful at all levels of play. She's one of those units that the better quality of gear you put on her, the further you can take her in the game. So don't be intimidated by people saying, oh, you need 300 speed for this unit to work. You don't. You don't. Eventually you will. Eventually you'll want that. But just starting out, just build her with what you can and be impressed with how much she carries you through RTA, Guild Wars, Arena, and a lot of PvE content. If you got this unit, mwah, well done. Judge Kise. Judge Kise recently got some buffs, and we were really hoping those buffs would catapult her back into the meta. She has always been incredibly difficult to build, and even though her stat requirements have been relaxed quite a bit, she's still kind of tough to build. She dishes out really, really good damage, and she has a fantastic kit. So if you got this unit, I think early game, you're going to have a lot of success with her. In early RTA, when you're just dipping your toes in, if you get this unit on the team and find ways to make sure she takes turns, either by protecting her behind units like Abigail or initiating her with speed pushing units like, say, Flan, she'll be able to rip your opponent apart. A nice thing too is one of her skills doesn't trigger counters, so you don't have to worry about Landy salvoing you to death. She can be useful in Guild Wars because of this. Really doesn't have many, if any, applications in early stage arena or even late stage arena, and her uses in PvE are limited. Sure, she's a good damage dealer, but so's Tieria. You'll find other units that probably can dish out as much, if not better, damage than her. But if you picked up this unit in your early game, you're probably pretty happy. Or if you picked up this unit in your very late game, you can probably find the gear and ways to make her work. It's that kind of middle to late game window that struggles to use her. You know, they're just kind of exiting the window where their gear's not quite good enough to make her shine, and their enemies are good enough to deal with what she has to put out there. So if you got this unit, enjoy her. Hope for another buff to make her even better. One of the best looking ML5s in the game, so congratulations if you got her. Don't be salty that she's not the best of the best. She is far from the worst of the worst, and yeah, I love me some Kise. Speaking of love, Lionheart Cermia. Cermia is beautiful, and if you can eventually pick up the skin when it's released here in about 9 months, even better. 9 months? Probably longer than 9 months. Anyway, Lionheart Cermia has recently had a buff that makes her easier to use. She is also a Renaissance unit. She is good in Guild Wars, she is good in Arena, she is good in RTA, she's good in PvP or PvE. Now, she's not meta in any of those places, but she is usable in a lot of those places. She is one of the best, if not the best, Katie's 13 farming unit. She's got some uses in Labyrinth as well as Nightmare Raid fighting the Queen. She is really, really good into specific Guild War offense or defenses where you can count on counters to activate her so she can drop good damage. She's somewhat hard to build in the sense that she uses very unusual gear. You want high damage gear that also has high defense on it, and that's not something people mostly chase, right? But that also means she's unlikely to steal gear from other units, and that's kind of nice. If you get Lionheart Cermia, fantastic unit, usable at about all levels of play, from really early game to late game. Just put some gear on her and give her a try. She'll do good things for you. It's not like she has to have a certain gear point to work. Just the better her gear is, the better she'll perform for you. Little Queen Charlotte is a little bit of a frustrating one to pick up. She is extremely strong. Her only problem is that there's a unit called Savior Auden who kind of does what she does, but a little bit better, right? Now, Little Queen Charlotte does more damage. She is capable of self-sustaining slightly better. She's got built-in damage mitigation, whereas Savior Auden relies on evasion, which either works or she dies. So a little bit better in longer, drawn-out fights. A little bit better of a bruiser unit because she can self-sustain and dish out good damage. But Auden also can give your entire team gold shields, which really pushes Auden ahead of her a little bit. And it's frustrating that we've got a powerhouse ML5 unit that's, I wouldn't say outclassed or power crept, but is kind of on par with a free 3-star unit. So it's not that Little Queen Charlotte isn't very, very good. It's just that in the places you'd reach for her, you'll probably want to reach for Auden too. So makes her a little bit hard to play. So all we're looking for is an EE or a little bit of a buff to knock her back into the meta. So if you got this girl, just hang in there. She'll be back with a vengeance. Ambitious Tywin, in my opinion, the most important support knight in the game. If this guy gets rage, then he can stun all of the enemies and defense break all of the enemies. And enrage is easy to get on him because he gives it to himself just from being attacked. And when he's enraged, he ignores effect resistance. That means it doesn't matter how much ER you have, he just does it. Also, when he's attacked, he cleanses a debuff from the entire team, like a built-in 100% chance Stella Harpa. This makes him very usable in a lot of hard-to-clear PvE content that has a lot of debuffs. He's a fantastic knight to take into Azamanic 13 and on several Abyss levels where debuffs are a problem. It makes him one of the best knights in a controlled debuff meta, one of the most usable knights in the game, and also his synergy with Sefan and Politis, who will just give him Enrage right out of the gate, makes him devastating to fight against. That's why you'll see Sefan and Politis and Ambitious Tywin together on most arena defenses. If you get one, try to find a way to get the other. If you picked Ambitious Tywin up, congratulations, you are set for your journey into RTA and for some niche uses in PvE as well. He's also a fantastic unit to put on Guild War and arena defenses. Belian. Belian is a floor boss. If you pick this unit up, you can buy her imprints from the shop and get her to Triple S right away. Belian can be built on counter. Belian can be built on destruction. Belian can be built on injury. Belian can be built on speed. You can put Belian on protection set and run her up to 30k health and make your team nigh unkillable. Belian stops you from using souls. Belian has so much diversity of build and power in her kit that she will never not be a meta unit. So much so that to this day, she is still perma pre-banned by a lot of people in RTA, and she is damn near a requirement to have on your arena defense and is still very, very strong in Guild War defenses. You're not going to reach for her much, if at all, in all but the most esoteric and unique PvE uses, but having this unit on your account really expands your ability to get into the PvP side. And because of her diversity of builds, it makes her relatively accessible. If you can't build her one way, build her another. So if you pick up Belian, congratulations. This is an evergreen unit that you will be glad that you have on your account forever. Dragon Bride Senya. What Tywin is to support, Dragon Bride Senya is to mitigation and damage. Dragon Bride Senya is a powerhouse unit. She is one of the highest damage units, and she protects the back row with a vengeance. If the back row gets hurt too bad, she activates and can solo teams. If you picked up Dragon Bride Senya, I think you're in a really good position for getting into RTA. Other than RTA, about her only uses are on defense in Arena and Guild Wars, and the occasional offense team if you're going to run slow. I think especially rolling into the Harsetti meta, we're going to find a lot of really good uses for Dragon Bride Senya. So if you got this unit, congratulations. You are almost ready to dive into RTA just from that. Whether you're early game or late game, you're going to find uses for Dragon Bride Senya. She really doesn't have many, if any, uses outside of RTA. She doesn't really have many, if any, uses outside of PvP, but even if you're not ready to dive into the competitive side of Epic 7, be glad you got this unit, because a few months from now, you'll be thrilled she's on your team. Same story for Empyrean Ilynav. Much like Dragon Bride Senya, her uses are seem to be strictly related to RTA, Guild Wars, and Arena, but she is S tier in all 3 of those. This unit turns off penetration, makes units like Genua and not really a concern anymore. If you get this unit on your team, you're going to have so much more success in early and late RTA, as well as being able to handle Guild War and Arena defenses. Just slap her on your defense and you immediately increase your chance to win. You can run this girl on damage, you can run her on injury, you can run her just super circle bulky so she never dies. And then there's my favorite build that a lot of people are ignoring, speed. You run her fast. Her S3 is a full cleanse and puts Indomitable up. Being able to cycle that skill quickly, especially considering her self-CR push passive, terrifying. So if you picked up this unit, congratulations, you are that much closer to being able to wreck people in the competitive side. Outside of PvP though, no real uses. She doesn't do much for you in PvE other than giving you some penetration protection. Last Rider Krau. 1 year ago, you would have been so happy to pull this guy. He was the meta. He was the best DPS knight. Every time he would use his S3, it would be an AoE attack that would mow down the enemy, and each time he did it, did more damage than the last. Plus, you could build him super bulky. You could give him Arius to make him a mitigation knight who also does damage, and mitigation knights who also do damage were kind of a rarity back then. Now we've got Ilynav and Senya. His usefulness has waned quite a bit. You'll still have some good success with him early on. He is still a fantastic damage mitigation knight. He's good into Guild Wars and early Arena. You'll have success with him, but you'll probably not reach for him much later game. Just stand by and wait for him to get his buff or his EE and catapult him back into the meta. If you got Navy Captain Landy, congrats on winning the game. You just pulled one of the top 5 units in the game, arguably one of the top 3. Landy is seen by most as the most dangerous unit in the game because just touching her or any of her friends can wind up with your entire team being dead and her healing herself. She is got a counter it, or when she counters on counter set, or when she attacks with her S1, she can proc her salvo attack, which self-heals her. She self-CR pushes, she does tremendous damage, she's self-sustaining. Her S3 has got a stun that wipes out your team, and if you don't have some way to avoid penetration, it'll ruin you. If you've picked up Navy Captain Landy, you are set. She is fantastic in Guild Wars, in Arena, in RTA. Because of her self-sustaining capabilities and her self-pushing capabilities, she's even good in a lot of PvE. You'll be able to take her into Abyss floors and even Adventure and accomplish fights you couldn't normally accomplish. The only negative to Landy is she is a heavy, heavy investment unit. You will never have gear that's quite good enough to satisfy you. Every time you roll a really good piece, you're like, oh, did I just upgrade my Landy? You'll constantly be giving her better and better gear because the better her gear, the more devastating she is to your enemy. And yeah, she takes all the mola. Everything good you've got, you give to this girl. Specimen Sez is a difficult unit to use. Now, Specimen Sez has got a special ability that when somebody is stunned and he attacks that unit, it dies. Like, almost guaranteed. There's very few units out there who can survive an S3 from Specimen Sez while stunned. It takes a tremendous amount of mitigation or special circumstances to not die. But here's the problem. Though Sez can be absolutely nuclear on damage, he is somewhat of a glass cannon, and he can just die. And he needs setup. You need somebody to put a stun out there so that Sez can kill it. Now, Sez does have stuns built into his kit, but it's not a 100% chance, and he has to waste his turn to apply the stuns, go around the horn, and then obliterate things. And that's a long time to have him in play and hope he doesn't get killed. But if you can compare this guy with somebody who puts out stuns, like the 3-star unit Arrowell, or Silverblade Aramentha, or anybody with bombs for that matter, if you can get stuns on the board, then Sez can just one-shot people. Mostly he is usable in Guild Wars, where you have the luxury of setting those kind of teams up and tuning them exactly the way you'd want it and initiate it. He's a great way to get through difficult fights in Guild Wars. but that's about it. He can be used in RTA, but you're really going to struggle trying to find a way to thread him into the fight, right? You're going to have to be able to get a couple of stun units on the team and Sez on the team, and then somehow draft something that's even scarier for your opponent to ban so he doesn't just ban your Sez. But if you can pull it off, we saw it in the World Cup. We saw Sez used with authority there, so he can be used. It's just he takes really good battle knowledge and experience. It's a learning curve with Sez. The only good thing we got about Sez is he's incredibly easy to gear. Even with the most mediocre gear, he can still murder anything. So easy to build, a little bit hard to play, takes a lot of setup. Spirit Eye Celine has been hot and cold for a couple of seasons now, and she's climbing back into the hot. If you really want to be that guy, you can put her on speed set and give her Secret Art Storm Sword and surprise the hell out of your enemy when she cuts up, takes a turn, puts immortality on everybody, and then you're just ruined. You can also run her slow on Dust Devil and Lifesteal so that she's almost impossible to kill. She's got a damage limiter in her that makes her hard to kill. Put her on a team with Arius and somebody that spams barrier and she's triply hard to kill. Really, really good in Guild Wars and a little bit in Arena, and situationally, enemy needs to ban her or they just lose in RTA. Now, as for PvE, she can bring your whole team back to life. And any unit that can bring your whole team back to life is going to have uses in PvE, especially one with the damage limiter who can self-heal if she's on lifesteal. Even when she's not on lifesteal, she self-heals, though it may not be enough. I think this is a very good pickup for all levels of play, though her uses aren't as like diverse as, say, oh, I don't know, Landy. You will find use for her if you pick up Spirit Eye Celine. Be happy you got her. Gorgeous unit with a really interesting kit. Twisted Eidolon Kayron. What have they done to you, my boy? Right now, about the only use for Kayron is in Arena. A team that I've demoed in my Arena video, and that team's probably not going to work after Harcetti is out. Other than that, he's incredibly difficult to use. The only way I found to use him is to get immortality on him from Shooting Star Arcades so that he sticks around long enough to do his stuff. He is just too fragile. The amount of gear it takes to make him a functional unit, the insane level of gear that it takes, that gear is probably better served on another unit. Kayron really needs a little something something. He needs an immortality proc like BBK or Fire Kayron has. He needs something to keep him alive so he can do his tricks, because his kit is amazing, but it doesn't feel like an ML5's kit. So if you pull this unit, enjoy his aesthetic, enjoy his look, have some fun with him in Arena before Harcetti ruins everything, and then just let him sit back and wait for the inevitable buff that will make him good. Tired of getting countered? Hate fighting Landy? Abyssal Yufine got you down? Don't like Belian on 3F? Astromancer Elena's got you covered. When she's on the team, counterattacks are turned off. Like all of them. So this lets you set up a lot of strategic offenses for Guild Wars and Arena. Things where you want to say, like, I want to Soulburn Rand to defense break everybody, push Ludwig up and nuke the enemy, but Landy and Abyssal Yufine are over there, and as soon as I push one button, they're all going to counterattack and kill my whole team. Take Astromancer Elena along for the ride, and you're protected from all of that. She's a tech pick that lets you overcome obstacles in Arena and in Guild Wars. In RTA, she can be a must-ban pick when your opponent is obviously leaning heavy on counterattack units. You can slap Elena on your team, and it forces your opponent to ban that unit, or they're just going to lose. And forcing your opponent to ban a unit means you get to pick the other 4 units on your team. So that alone makes her a useful unit. She's not going to set the world on fire. She is a counter mechanic unit, more so than a standalone good unit. But in her niche, she is amazing. So if you pick this unit up, be glad you've got a fantastic tool for your toolbox. Commander Pavel. I used to cleave with this guy like nobody's business. Commander Pavel is a little bit harder to use, especially with the inception of Ilynav now, but You will still find the occasional use for cleaving with them, more so in Arena and Guild Wars than in RTA, though I assume you could probably slot him in places in RTA. One of his current best uses is as a follow-up unit on your adventure clear teams, when you're wanting to farm unrecorded history or just clear adventure altogether. Sometimes your RB or Free Spirit Chariot can clear the first few phases easy, but then the boss survives the hit at the end. Well, when she hits that boss at the end, Pavel's passive will proc, he'll hit the boss, he'll push up, and then he'll S3 the boss. Nothing lives through that. So he is one of the fastest finisher units for clearing unrecorded history. If you really want to farm that gold super fast, he's your man. And maybe he'll get an EE or something that will bring him back into the meta for RT as well. Faithless Lidica is an insanely broken unit, an S tier unit, one of the strongest units in the game if you have the gear. And if you have that gear, you already know how good she is. Faithless Lidica is one of those units. Faithless Lidica is one of those few and far between units who, if she doesn't have the right gear, she just doesn't work. She requires very good, very high-end speed gear and proper team synergy to function. If you pull this unit, stick her in your storage and keep her as an investment hero. Try her out, right? Go have some fun with her, but she's got really minimal to no PvE uses other than maybe trying to get a Dagger Sakaar run in Labyrinth. Guild War and Arena uses are minimal, and RTA uses are only at the highest end of gear and skill. So she is one of those units who is beyond the average player, but once you're able to use her, you can do some insane things with this unit. If you pick this unit up, have some fun with it, but don't go nuts investing in her. Not the easiest unit to use. She's arguably the hardest unit in the game to build. Architect Laika. Architect Laika is basically Girl Strays, right? Though her mechanics work a little bit different than Strays, she's the same concept. She is a tank buster. She allows you to erase one enemy from the team, but you've got to build her fast enough to take that turn and strong enough to do that damage. And speed DPS units, you'll probably find, are the hardest units to build. And that makes Architect Laika a little bit difficult to get together on your team. And it's tough to slot her in. She's not quite fast enough to go first, and she's not quite strong enough to kill at the super high speeds, so you really need a bridge unit. You need somebody to make her go from wherever she is in the turn order to the front of the line so that she can get things done. An initiator or a bridge unit, and those are tough to slot into modern RTA. There are places where she's great as a third pick, but predominantly I think you're going to wind up using her in Guild Wars, if anywhere. Much like Strays, she's just hard to use right now. So if you pick up this unit, go ahead and give her a whirl. She is unique in that she is one of the very few non-ranger units with target on her set, on her skills. So that potentially has some PvE uses down the road, but for right now, not the most usable unit. Maybe an EE will bring her back into the limelight. If you pulled New Moon Luna, congrats on winning the game. Your entire guild is now pissed off at you. New Moon Luna is arguably the most broken unit in the game. AoE seal that ignores ZR on a soul burn, and she's a mage so she can carry her own book, plus significant damage and a defense break make her a one-woman wrecking machine. She can solo entire teams. She is predominantly an RTA unit. I don't know of many, if any, PvE uses for her, but in Guild Wars, in Arena, and in RTA, she's a force to be reckoned with. She's one of those units that just works. I'm sure it'd be like, oh yeah, you need 500 speed and 10 billion health. She's one of those units, the better you make her, the faster, the higher HP, the more effectiveness you make her, the better she'll be, but she works on mediocre gear. Some people are even purposely running this girl slow so they can stack HP and effectiveness on her and ruin people who think she's fast and prepare for a fast one, and then are surprised by the fact that she goes last and then sets everything up after you try to control her. So yeah, Nice diversity of builds and the most important PvP unit in the game. If you pick this one up, congratulations, you did well. Sage, Baal, and Sezan. A lot of people don't like this unit. You might initially be very sad to get it, but I want you to consider what Harseti is going to do to the meta and how Baal and Sezan plays into that. Now, I'm sure his self-CR pushing won't happen during Harseti's turn, but whoever goes next will push Baal and Sezan. So he won't go right after Harseti, not likely to at least, unless he happens to be first. But he will definitely always go second, because whoever goes first after Harseti, Baal will push up, and then he can control the entire enemy team. And it's very unlikely if you build a good Sage Baal that you're going to be able to control this guy. And being able to control the enemy team so that you have first turn, choice. He's got a Dark Corvus style S3 that heals him back up. He does nuclear damage, true damage with that. He is loaded with debuffs, and you can build him really, really, really fast to mess with cleavers, or really, really, really slow, but damn near unkillable to mess with slower players. He's got a large diversity of build from counter set to speed set, and his kit in general is a great way to say, stop trying to cleave me. I don't want any of what you've got. So yeah, if you get this guy, be happy you got him. I think especially moving into the new metas we're heading towards, Baal and Sezan is going to be a fantastic pickup. Silverblade Aramantha, my #1 choice for next season's RTA skin. I mean, really, give this 2019 artwork here a little bit of a glow up, right? She really, the current art team needs to be set loose on this gorgeous unit. The reason Silverblade is not seen that much anymore is Fire Aramantha has kind of stolen most of her jobs, and it's weird for a RGB equivalent to be better than the ML unit, so I strongly suspect she'll be getting a buff or an EE very, very near future. So if you pick up this unit, don't despair. She is really good in Guild Wars. She's a control unit rolled into one. You put Abyssal Crown on her, and you roll in there with Specimen Sez, and you can wipe out most Guild War defenses. But unfortunately, that's about her only use right now, is part of a Specimen Sez stun bot team to help initiate Sez and make him kill everything else. So yeah, if you don't have Sez, then just enjoy how good this unit looks and hang on to her until hopefully in the very near future she gets her patch. Oh, Solitary of the Snow. What a cutie. What a diabolical, horrible, difficult to fight against, table flipping cutie. Solitary of the Snow can be built fast. She can build on damage. She can be built on injury. She could have a stun artifact. She could have a damage boosting artifact. She can have Seer Ren to stack more debuffs on you. She is a walking control unit. She self-stealths after she takes a turn. Her S3 has got a stun in it. Her S1 has an extra attack, much like Harseti will. So you can do a lot of things with this unit. She is especially diabolical to run with Death Dealer Ray. She's one of Death Dealer Ray's best friends. If you pick up this unit, she is a little hard to build because, again, she does require pretty high speed and effectiveness and a little bit of damage if you want to go that route. So she's a little gear hungry, but a really nice pickup for a control unit that is great in Guild Wars Arena and RTA. Doesn't really have any uses outside of PvP. So if you're not a PvP player or you're relatively new to the game, this is one of those units you'll probably set to the side, and a few months from now you'll be very glad you have, and you'll start to build because of how useful she is to you. Sylvan Sage Vivian. On paper, this looks like one of the best pickups you could possibly have, right? It is a damage-dealing mage who can heal and has mitigation, so she's a Soul Weaver, a Knight, and a Mage all rolled into one. Oh wait, she's tanky too, so she's like a war. She's like every single class in the game rolled into one unit. But because of that, she takes insanely good gear. Right? She needs to be thick enough to not die, strong enough to do damage, fast enough to heal, and she's got to be able to self-sustain, so you've got to do all this in Lifesteal set, which doesn't give you any stats. Oh, and you'll probably want the Chatty artifact to help protect her, and you'll have to pay 900 Sky Stones to open up the side story to get that artifact. Heavy investment hero. Not for the faint of heart. If you get this unit, great. You're going to be able to do wonderful things with this unit, but not right away. Start building her bit by bit. Don't try to rush it. She is not to be rushed. You treat this lady nice and slow. And eventually you will get her where you want her, and she will do some great things for you. But initially, just starting out, you'll probably find some PvE uses. Anybody who can carry book and heal your team and also do damage and be self-sustaining and provide mitigation is going to find uses in PvE. Be it Abyss or exploring the Labyrinth or just a lot of hard story levels, you'll find some good uses for Sylvian. RTA, Guild Wars, and Arena, of course, are her niche roles. She's designed to be a PvP unit. Takes very, very high-end gear to dip her into that pool, so be aware that just having this unit alone and slapping low-end gear on her might not be enough. You're probably going to want to make sure you build her up right before you dive into those. So many people will be so mad if they get Desert Jewel Basar. They think this is terrible. It's a bad unit. He doesn't do anything. Desert Jewel Basar is one of the best bridge units out there. You can put him on a Turnus or Soul Consolation, and when the enemy tries to do a debuff or non-attack skill, it'll CR push him up. And when everybody's debuffed, you know what Basar does? He cleanses all those debuffs and replaces them with immunity. And then he CR pushes the whole team. Oh, and he heals you while he's doing it. His S1's got a stun on it. He is a great bridge and support unit. Just most people don't want a support unit. When they get an ML5, they want to see the big numbers. They want to blow things up. They want to make their enemy spam angry Vildred emotes because they can't get anything done. Whereas Desert Jewel Basar is an initiator. He is a bridge. He is a cleanser. He is pure support. And that feels a little weird in ML5, but it's also very important. So having this guy on your team can solve a lot of problems. Principally PvP. I guess maybe in some areas of PvE you could find some use. There's always use for immunity and cleanse and healing. But predominantly he's used for PvE. One of the nice blow-up things he has is if your opponent procs barriers, he can use his S2 and invert the barriers. So if they have a 5k barrier, 5k health barrier on themselves, he will take that barrier away and do 5k damage to them. He inverts the barrier, turns the barrier into damage, which can oftentimes be enough to kill a unit when it's a big barrier like what Blood Moon Haste or Dragonbride Senya puts on units. So don't be too upset if you got Basar. I know he's not the most fun thing in the world, but there are times when he is perfection in a team, be it Guild Wars or RTA. Oh, God. So this ugly ball of blech is Dragon King Sharun. I hate this unit. But I have to admit she's really good at what she does. And what she does is counter a mechanic. Sleeps and stuns, and she rips the enemy apart. She was basically born to deal with Death Dealer Ray, who is one of the most dangerous units in the game. So if your enemy picks Death Dealer Ray, slam Dragon King Sharun and ruin them. Because she can actually do some good damage, and because she counters game mechanics, she counters stuns and sleeps. Because of this, she'll be an evergreen unit. She will always be a useful unit to have in your toolbox to whip out when the situation arises. Now, on her own as a standalone unit, not so much. But as a counter pick, as an answer to bad situations, fan-freaking-tastic. As for use in non-PvP, I'm sure there's some floors out there where you have to deal with stuns and sleeps, and she's probably going to be okay there, but is principally just an RTA unit. She's almost never used in Arena, Guild Wars, or PvE. Maid Chloe. You're going to pull this unit, you're going to go look at tier lists, and you're going to think, man, I'm the unluckiest person ever. This unit's D tier, F tier, dog water. Man, you couldn't be more wrong. The newer you are, the better this unit is. She cleanses, she brings all your dead units back to life. Any unit that's alive when she uses her skill gets a resurrection buff, so if they happen to die, they'll come back. She gives attack buff, she self-heals the team. Passively, she bonks people with her S1 for like a 75% chance to stun the enemy. And she's really tanky and hard to kill. Are you kidding me? How can you say a unit that cleanses all debuffs and replaces them with an attack buff and a resurrection buff is bad in any way, shape, or form? What makes her not good on most tier lists is at the end game, most people have ways to deal with resurrection. Her healing isn't quite strong enough to keep up with the damage that's being dished out, and she's a little bit slow, so by the time her attack buff is up, you didn't really need it anymore. But that's only at the very, very end game. The further you progress in this game, the more answers you get, the better you get at RTA, the less you're going to reach for her. But early game, she is a safety net for Abyss. She's going to let you clear content. She'll help you survive in Guild Wars. You'll be able to whip this girl out in early RTA, and your opponent thinks they've got you on death's door, and then she soul burns her S1 over and over for extra turns, and then drops her S3, and your whole team comes back to life, and the guy angry Vildred emotes and leaves just before you got to Raslaff him. Isn't that great? So yeah, if you got Maid Chloe, especially if you're early game, be thrilled. She is a fan-freaking-tastic unit who, the newer you are, the better she is. Ruele of Light is in a similar boat, right? She is not as all-purpose useful as Maid Chloe, but she still has a very, very strong resurrection skill. Now, it's only single target, but unlike Maid's, which brings you back at 30% health, so you really need a secondary healer to clean it up, Ruele brings you back not only at full health, but Ruele brings you back at full health with invincibility, so you can't take any damage, which means you basically, no matter where you were on the CR bar, you'll get to take a turn before you can be killed again. She's one of the few units that's got a heal on her S1, S2, and S3 skill. Most of her stuff is single target. Her kit is very dated. I mean, come on, she's from the 6th world. It's Epic 7. Of course her kit's dated, but still a very good Guild War unit. She's one of the better units to run with Dark Corvus to help keep him alive. She's got some great uses in Abyss when you're really trying to keep, bring people back for second chances. Any resurrection unit's a nice safety net unit, but she is one of those units more so than Maid Chloe that the further you get in the game, the less you're going to reach for her. There are very few situational occurrences where you would reach for Ruele over Maid, but they do exist. So if you pick up this unit, don't be too upset about it. She is a good unit, and she is also an original unit. She's been around since the beginning, so she is very, very likely to get a buff or an EE that should hopefully catapult her back into the meta. Now let's move into the dark units. Apocalypse Ravi. Once the terror of RTA, the great disaster unit, the unit that ruined everything. The reason Hua Young even existed was to kill this unit, and then Hua Young killed everything but this unit. That's how good this unit is. She's fallen off a little bit lately, mostly due to Blood Moon Haste stealing a lot of her thunder, but she is still a powerhouse unit. You can build her on counter, you can build her on destruction, you can build her on speed. She is one of those units that just works. Even with mediocre gear, she's still really, really good. And the better the gear gets, the better she gets, the stronger she can carry you. We're years after her release, and she is still an impactful unit. And what she does is when she kills a unit with her S3, that unit dies, and one of the dead units on your team comes back to life, which can completely flip the tempo of the fight. You can go from it being 3-on-3 to being 4-on-2, and suddenly the other person's got no way out. She's an HP scaler, making her very hard to kill. She heals herself when she attacks, even when she's not on lifesteal. She's a warrior, so she can use self-healing artifacts and also a lot of mitigation artifacts. Makes her a powerhouse unit. Now, if you're in an RTA fight and you can't figure out who to pick, and you're just watching that timer count down and you're stun locked and you don't know what to do, she's one of those units that you just like, screw it, pick APOC, and you're probably going to be okay. She works with most every comp. She can anchor, she can solo, she can bruiser with the best of them. So if you get APOC Ravi, you are ready to jump into RTA. Just with this unit and a little bit of support, you can succeed at lower RTA. You're not going to find much use for her outside of RTA, although much like Ruele and Maid, any unit that can kill something and bring one of your units back to life is a nice safety net, and that's going to work in Abyss floors, in PvE, just like RTA. So yeah, a nice Renaissance unit and a good solid pickup for any level of play. I hope you like Guild Wars, because that's where you're using this guy. This guy's an I win button for Guild Wars. Not every, but many defenses will fall because you have this unit on your team. You back up Dark Corvus with a good Soul Weaver like Destina or Ruele, and then pick a third unit. Pick Rowana if there's counters. Pick a Seria to reset his skills. Because when Dark Corvus uses his S3, especially if he soul burns it, it'll erase somebody. And that erasure comes with extinction, so they can't even bring it back. You S3 Abyssal Yufine, no holy sack. You S3 Arby, just dead, he doesn't come back. And every time he's hit, it increases his stacks. And once he's hit a certain number of times, he's able to just go and nuclear destroy an enemy. And Asaria makes that even faster. Or just go double Soul Weaver. Go Destina and Ruele, or Destina and Rowana. Just give him all the protection he needs and let him chew through the enemy one at a time. It won't be fast, it won't be exciting, but it's a safe, guaranteed win in so many fights. And that's it. You're not going to use him in any PvE. You're not going to use him in Arena. It's very unlikely you'll use him in RTA. He is just a Guild Wars unit, but he is arguably the best Guild Wars unit. Designer Lilibet. You know, she could be trash or treasure. Right now, she's a little hard to use. Once upon a time, she was the most devastating unit out there. When debuffs are stacked up, she'll self-focus, CR push up, cleanse all the debuffs, and reset the enemy's skills. And based on the way her skills are worded, it looks like she might be one of the few solid counters to Harsetti. We just have to see. We don't really know how Harsetti works. We all assume. Everybody thinks they know. Everybody say, well, it's worded like this. Smogate's terrible at grammar. Terrible. So just because it says one thing doesn't mean that's the way it's going to happen. So we all have to wait and see what Harsetti does, and if that's going to bring Lilibet back to the meta, or if she's going to continue to be just a good anti-cleave unit when people are trying to use a cleave that relies on debuffs. Other than that, there's really no use for Lilibet right now. I'm sure there's maybe some Abyss floors or PvE that are constantly loaded with debuffs where she might be good at. She does bring good damage. She's a defense scaler, which is easier to build than most. And the reset skill you think would be great, but just not a lot of uses for her outside of a very narrow niche in RTA. The Goddess. Congratulations if you picked up this smoking hot redhead. Lone Crescent Bellona. Lone Crescent Bellona crits. Like always. Like you don't need any crit chance on her. She just always crits the enemy. And that alone makes her so much easier to build. Which is good because she takes insane gear, right? Because she wants every stat. She wants HP, she wants defense, she wants crit damage, she wants attack. The only thing she doesn't need is effectiveness, effect resistance, and crit chance. So you can build her on lifesteal, you can build her on counter, you can build her on destruction, you can build her on speed. Personally, I think destruction and speed are her best sets, but you do you. Find a way to build her. Whatever gear gets you the stats you need. Having a unit that always crits is so nice in a world of anti-crit, in a world of ML Landies. She is so good into those fights. So if you've picked up the Goddess, congratulations. She is, in my opinion, one of the stronger units in the game. Both in PvP and PvE. Her extra attacks, her self-sustain off the artifacts, her ability to do crits all the time without having to worry about crit chance means you'll be able to take her in and out of just about all kinds of content in this game. Martial Artist Ken is the polar opposite of Seaside Bellona. When somebody crits, Martial Artist Ken claps back with a nuclear kick crit to the face. He is especially devastating at countering Abyssal Yufine, ML Landy, and Lone Crescent Bellona. Somebody takes those units, you drop ML Ken on the board, and they have better come up with a way to deal with ML Ken or they're going to lose. ML Ken is really nice into Arena and Guild War comps that have those kind of units, the units that crit on the offense. He is a little bit weak in PvE. Some people have had some success with him in PvE, but the problem is most monsters have about a 50-50 shot to crit at best. And if somebody doesn't crit, Ken really doesn't do much of anything. So, yeah. If you pick this guy up, you're in really good shape for early arena, early guild war, and early to mid RTA. He is great into that, and he is niche good into late RTA as well. Mediator Kawerik, once considered the best ML5 to pick up in the game because he does everything. Yeah, no, everything. He does it all. Yeah, that too. He does that. He cleanses all your debuffs. He gives everybody immunity. He gives everybody an attack buff. His S1 CR pushes people on your team and does pretty good damage. His S3 strips and gives barriers to your whole team and gives attack down to the person he S3'd. I mean, what doesn't this guy do? He is a Soul Weaver built in a warrior's body. The only reason you don't see him picked as much anymore is because of this candy-eating vampire girl named Laika, who is basically Mediator Kawerik minus a few tools, but plus a lot more damage. But Kawerik is still a powerhouse unit, both in PvE and PvP. He is so good, I've built two of them, one for damage and one for mitigation. He can do really good damage. He's got really good damage stats and mods, and he's also got really tanky stats as well. So you can build 25 to 30k health on this guy and make him unkillable and have him just keep the enemy from controlling you. And in a game where control is so strong, this guy's value is through the roof. Both in PvP and in PvE, you'll find uses for him all over the map. If you got Mediator Kawerik, congratulations. Top 10 unit, easy. Strays. You're going to see a lot of tier lists putting this guy at the top. S tier, S tier. Yeah, that was last year. Now he's kind of a has-been. He's a tank buster. When he uses his S3 skill, anybody who has got really high health is going to explode if they don't also have really high attack. The problem is you got to get him to take a turn. He's got really no built-in survival mechanics. I mean, once he uses his S3, which can't trigger a counter, he puts a gold shield up. So he's got survival mechanics after he takes a turn, but you got to get him to take a turn, which means you need a really good team built around initiating this guy, because you can't build him too fast. You build him so fast he goes first, he's not going to have anything left for damage. That level of gear is going to be beyond most people. So you're going to have a bridge unit or an initiator to get him to take a turn so that he can nuke the enemy. And that's not easy, because your opponent probably will just ban the initiator or strays himself. So it makes him difficult to use. He's one of those units that you kind of pick last in the right situations, and then your enemy bans him or loses. He is harder and harder to use in a modern meta. And you're going to hear, oh, but he can one-shot any hunt. Yeah, I got all kinds of videos on that. Just Google my name plus one-shot and whatever hunt name you're wanting to find, and you'll find dozens of teams using strays to one-shot everything from Katie's to Banshee to Wyvern. And yeah, it can be done. It can be done, but it takes an insanely high level of gear for this guy to be a hunt one-shot machine. I'm talking like, if you haven't been playing for at least 2 years, you probably do not have the level of gear required to make a strays one-shot. And even if you did, why are you still farming hunts? If you have that level of gear, you should be farming Rift, because it's just better for gear. So, unfortunately, Strays is a warrior without a cause now. He's lost his job in PvE due to Rift being so much better, and he's lost his job in RTA due to the meta just leaving him behind. So if you picked up a Strays, he's one of those units that we're kind of ever hopeful that he gets a buff or an EE that returns him to his rightful place in the meta, because the God Killer deserves better than this. The guy cuts planets in half with a sword. He should be usable in this game. Oh, I hated this unit when she came out. I just didn't like her, but then I watched Edge Runners and I was like, now she reminds me of Rebecca. Now it's kind of fun. And then I used her skill once. And as I'm using her S3, my daughter looks over my shoulder and goes, "Giant rat gun!" And that just made my day. It was so damn adorable that I have really grown attached to Shu. Urban Shadow Shu is a unit that the more injury is on your enemy, the more deadly she becomes. And with units like Death Dealer Ray, Injury Belian, Ilynav, and now Alencia running around, don't underestimate the power of Urban Shadow Shu as a finisher unit. You can build her super fast, super tanky. She doesn't need a lot of damage, because when she pulls the trigger on her giant rat gun, something's gonna die. A lot of times 2 somethings. So yeah, if you got Urban Shadow Shoe, you're in really good shape for going ham on people in Guild Wars and in RTA. Not so much Arena. Now, unfortunately, injury doesn't work in PvE, so she's got 0 use in PvE whatsoever. She's just a Guild War and an RTA unit, but she is top-notch on both of those. So if you picked up an Urban Shadow Shoe and you're not quite ready for the competitive side yet, stick her in your storage. You'll be very glad you have her down the road when you're ready to make that leap. Ooh, the trauma girl herself, Abyssal Yufine. One of the more tragic backstories in Epic 7. Abyssal Yufine is the unit that came out at a time when we all thought, how could things get worse than Landy? And then Yufine came out and reminded us to shut our mouths because things can always get worse. Abyssal Yufine is a powerhouse unit that if you do not kill her quickly, she will destroy your entire team. You are on a serious a ticking timer with her, and if she gets her focus all the way up and she goes into her trauma mode and you don't have ML Ken or ML Ilynav on your team, she will wipe you out. She's got AoE attacks that self-heal her on her S1. She's got the ability to attack down you to make it harder to kill. And when she goes into trauma mode, her damage is through the roof. Now, she does take high quality gear at a minimum. I don't care what anybody tells you. At a minimum, she needs 2,000 defense. 199, not enough. Okay? It's at 2,000 defense is where her skills do crazy things. 2,000 or higher. This is where things double. If you're at 199, you're leaving so much on the table. Once you got 2,000 defense, you pump the rest into crit chance, crit damage, give a little bit over to health, some for attack too, and she will treat you well. She's a relatively hard unit to build, great, but she's a pretty easy unit to build good. So if you picked up Abyssal Yufine, she will be solid for you at all levels of play. Arena defense, Guild War defense, offense, RTA, even some PvE usages. She is a must-have for my full auto Nightmare Devourer team. She can be used to help clear adventures with her constant AoE spamming. And yeah, just if you picked up this unit, congrats. Another one of the top 10 units in the game. Oh man, Fallen Cecilia. What an appropriate name. Fallen Cecilia. Fallen Cecilia, when she came out, was good, and then the meta shifted, and she became so good that she was one of the first units labeled as a great disaster for Epic 7. It was impossible to win against this unit. The entire reason Operator Sigrid existed was as a way to try to counter and deal with this unit. Unfortunately, her kit is very, very 2 years ago. So many knights have come out that do what she does and better, that though she is good, though her kit is strong, though she is a great mitigation knight who you can build for damage or just for defense, she was one of the first units that 30k health was accessible. She is not as good as many other knight options, some of which are 3 and 4 star. The good news I have for you is everybody wants her to be good again. She is at the top of the list of units we're asking to have buffed, so it's very unlikely that she's going to be bad for long. Look to see her get an EE or a patch very, very soon and return to the meta triumphantly. So if you pulled this unit, don't be put off by everybody saying she's bad. She's bad right now. Nothing stays bad in this game for long. Arbiter Vildred. Arbiter Vildred has had a roller coaster from trash to treasure to trash again, back to treasure. His latest EE has made him a monster in RTA, and he is also really good in PvE as well. He's one of the preferred rep heroes for people to use, or friend heroes for people to take on adventures with them. He is second only to Free Spirit Tieria for wiping out mobs in adventure. He can die and come back to life, with makes him good on harder levels. He can be built on speed with lots of damage. He can be built bruiser and tanky on counter set with an evasion artifact to really be a pain in the butt for your opponents. He can be built super nuclear damage but with glass stats, so that somebody can accidentally kill him with just a random salvo, and then he comes back and nukes the entire enemy team because he's so strong. There's lots of ways to build Arbiter Vildred, and he is a solid pickup and a great and a great way to get into RTA. Now, a lot of people say he's so good, you should pick him over Spectre Tenebria. Those people are not to be trusted. They are looking at it with just RTA in mind. And if you're getting in this game just for RTA, I would agree. But, nah, you pick Stenny first. Arby's a close second. And on the opposite side of the spectrum is Closer Charles. So C Loser Charles is one of those units who is actually, the newer you are, the better he is. Closer Charles can CR push your team, do a lot of AoE damage, is a thief, so he can wear a lot of really neat artifacts, does high-end damage on his own, relatively easy to gear because he doesn't need a lot of crit. He is great at clearing first stage mobs for a lot of the hunts. He's an integral part of an Azamanic 13, A13 one-shot team. He will help you out at really early levels of RTA, like, you know, sub-masters levels, clearing out opponents, initiating your team, bridging units up so that they can do more damage. Closer Charles is freakishly good the earlier you are. Now, as you advance and you get better, and you get smarter, and you get more units, you're going to reach for him less and less, because the things he does, you're going to find other units just do better for you. But early on, fantastic unit. So if you got this unit and you're new, don't listen to the haters. Be glad you got him, build this guy, go clear some content. He brings a lot to the table. Just realize that the longer you play, the less and less you're going to find you're reaching for good old Closer Charles, at least until they give him a buff. And hey, maybe by then you'll be ready to reach for him again. Remnant Violet. Remnant Violet is a faith-based unit. Our Lord and Savior Violet can evade and dodge. Much like Auden, very hard to hit. And if you miss him too often, he'll rack up his points and unleash a devastating one-shot attack that can kill most things. Now, he is somewhat countered by Ilynav, and by somewhat I mean very. He's very countered by units that see through evasion, like Last Piece Corinne, or Shaltir, or Zahak. So there's a lot of things that work against Rylet, up to and including being hit so hard by units like Genua that even on a miss he dies. But picked into the right spot, he can solo entire teams. So though his niche is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, it's still a good niche. And you're still going to find good use for him, especially when you're early game. This is another unit, much like Apoc Ravi, where when you're sitting there at the end and you're trying to figure out who to pick, and you're staring at all the units your opponent picked, and you're trying to fathom what all those units do to you, and you're stun locked, and you're watching the timer kick down, 10, 9, 8, 7, and you're running out of time, pick Rylet. Just slam God and go to town on them. Faith-based unit, believe in Rylet enough, and he will lead you to victory. But that's about it. I mean, you know, so you try to, the longer the fight lasts, the harder it is to count on his evasion. So his PvE usages are near zero, and Arena and Guild Wars, you're not going to find too many uses for him, but he is a really nice RTA unit as a niche pick at late game, and is just all the time slam this unit early game and just win fights by nature of how toxic his kit is. Once you learn his counters and learn how to avoid them, you can pick this guy into early RTA and dominate at a very early level. Speaking of counters for Rylet, we have Briarwitch Assaria. Briarwitch Assaria is a very unique and interesting unit. Much like Green Assaria is a very unique and interesting unit who does something nobody else does. Briarwitch does unique and interesting things herself. You see, Briarwitch Assaria, first she's got an immortality passive, so you can't kill her in one hit. You drop her HP to 1 and she'll proc immortality, then you gotta strip that, and then you gotta kill her. So it's a multi-step process to getting this girl off the field. And her S3 has got a defense break and a buff block, and if she soul burns it ignores ER. You can run her really, really fast and have her be an opener initiator, or you can run her relatively slow and have her be a follow-up damage dealing unit. What's unique about Briarwitch Assaria is that while she's on the field, just by nature of existing, she doesn't have to take a turn or anything, it's not a buff or anything like that, just by existing, Resurrection is turned off. And I mean turned off. RB dies, he doesn't come back. Holy Sack procs, nothing happens. Maid Chloe uses her S3, nada. She turns Resurrection off, but it's a double-edged sword. it does it for your team too. So for the love of God, people, please stop picking this unit with Arby, right? Understand the anti-synergy of picking resurrection units with a unit that blocks resurrection for both teams. But if your opponents picked Arby into you, if they picked Arby and Maid Chloe, if they picked Abyssal Yufine and you're sure that girl's on Holy Sacrifice, Briar Witch turns all that off in a kit that is hard to kill. So yeah, she is one of the better rangers in the game. Easily a top 10 unit. If you picked up Briar Witch's Cermia, you're in great shape for RTA. She is really good in Guild Wars because of this niche ability, and you can plan it into it. And though she's a little harder to use in Arena, you should still find uses for her there. Now, unfortunately, Resurrection Block typically does not work in PvE. There might be some early Abyss levels where it still works, but they've usually changed the whole things are resurrected to things are summoned to make it different so that you can't cheese levels with this girl anymore. So not that many uses in PvE, but really good PvP unit. One of the best. Operator Sigrid. Remember when I said Fallen Cecilia was so dangerous? It's because Fallen Cecilia spammed barriers, so they made a unit that nukes people through barriers. But after units like Desert Jewel Basar came out with barrier inversion, it kind of stole her thunder. You know, why not take a unit that heals and supports your team and nukes people with barriers, and you don't have to build them with an insane level of gear? Because Operator Sigrid takes an insane level of gear to make her usable, and it's just the gear's better on other units. And her ability to nuke through barriers isn't really that special anymore. She's very, very difficult to use in a modern era. Of all of the units right now, I think this is the least usable unit at all levels of play. She's too hard to gear for new players, and she's just too hard to use. Her niche doesn't really exist anymore for late game players. So yeah, if you picked Operator Sigrid, enjoy her aesthetic. Be happy such a pretty unit has landed in your lap. And then stick her in your lobby so you can check out her animation, or put her in your waiting room. She is right there with Fallen Cecilia for top of the list of people asking for her to be balanced, buffed, or modified so that she can be usable again. Because remember, no matter how bad a unit is, they never stay bad for long. Case in point, Blood Moon Haste was the worst unit in the game until he wasn't, if you catch my drift. Pirate Captain Flan. What a gorgeous unit. I love this unit. She is so beautiful. Much like Closer Charles, the earlier you are in the game, the more useful this unit is, her control and everything. But there's a couple of things going against her. First, she really, really, really needs the artifact Star of the Deep Sea, which is Summertime Assyria's artifact. It's a limited artifact, so you're going to have to wait until a Summertime Assyria rerun, or until a limited banner, or until a custom banner where you can choose a limited unit comes up so you can get that artifact. Without that artifact, she's not a real unit. She's not playable. She's beautiful, but you will not be able to use her in any real meaningful way. Now, some people will cope and say, oh, well, you could put this artifact or that. No, you really can't. You really can't. I mean, you can try, and maybe you'll have some success, but you would have had better success with other units. So until you get Star of the Deep Sea, not a real unit. If you have Star of the Deep Sea, though, it's still kind of a mediocre unit. Early game, you'll be able to do a lot with her. You'll be able to run people over in low-end arena and low-end RTA, right? Like Masters and below, she is fantastic because people just aren't equipped to deal with the amount of control, damage, and torture she puts out there. But once you get into a higher, more competitive level, she is nearly unusable. We had a shot at her being really, really broken. We had some insane buffs that were coming out, but a vocal minority who just don't really understand the game at all, unfortunately got her buffs reverted, and we're desperately pleading with Smogate to say, don't take this as an indictment to never touch this unit again. Give this girl some love, make it so that we can enjoy her and use her. It would be great if you gave us a way to use her that wasn't centered around a limited artifact. And hopefully one day we'll see Pirate Flan's return to greatness. But for right now, her only real use is at an early level, at an early game for use in early RTA, or lower end RTA, and only for people who've picked up Star of the Deep Sea. So yeah, very conditional unit, hard to use, hard to gear. Sea Phantom Politis. Remember I talked about Conqueror Lilias being one of the most important units in the game? And then Sea Phantom Poly came and stole all of her thunder, right? So here's the differences. Sea Phantom Poly gives Rage instead of Vigor. Now Vigor is nice, but Rage activates Tywin. Remember when I said he was one of the best knights in the game? That's because Tywin and Sea Phantom Poly are besties. You don't have to hit Tywin at all to give him Rage. She just gives it to him for free. And then Tywin can like control your whole team because suddenly he ignores ER with his stuns and defense breaks. And then it's over. Sea Phantom Poly also strips and pushes the enemy back. Sea Phantom Poly also dual attacks, but unlike Conqueror Lilias, who dual attacks with a random person, Sea Phantom Poly dual attacks with the highest attack unit on the team. Unlike Conqueror Lilias, who CR pushes one unit back, Sea Phantom Poly pushes the entire team back and puts a slow debuff on them, so they have trouble catching back up. Now Lilias still has a counter. I'm sorry. Now Lilias still has a provoke on her S2 and gives some barriers for some survivability, and that's nice, but pound for pound, Sea Phantom Poly is so much better that almost everybody moved their gear off of Lilias and onto Poly. Now that doesn't mean Lilias is bad. That just means Politis is a little bit more popular right now. So yeah, if you picked up this unit, congrats on winning the game. One of the best units in the game, both for RTA, Guild Wars, Arena, and because of her ability to dual attack and give Rage, which is a straight up buff to your entire team's stats, she even has some really good uses in PvP as well for clearing difficult content from Abyss to Labyrinth to Adventure. Ainz Ul Gon is a collaboration unit, so he is not in the pool. No matter how much you want him to be, you cannot pick up Ainz from this ticket or any 5-star summon, not until the collaboration comes back. But if it's any salve for your wounded soul, Ainz is not very good. Ainz really needs a buff. Archdemon Shadow, all the way back from chapter number 1, our very first floor boss unit. Her kit's very, very dated, right? She's the first unit to have Seal. You know, the thing that Luna does AoE. Well, she does it with single target, but she also drops a whole bunch of damage. She can be loaded with debuffs, and she's on a countdown timer. Eventually, when she gets 5 focus, she's able to use her S3, which burns everybody, breaks everybody, kills most people, and it grants her an extra turn so that she can then just S1 into an extra hit into those defense breaks. And if she is on the enemy team, you've got to get rid of her before this happens or it's over for you. She's not played as heavily anymore, less because she's not good and more because there are just better options right now, but she is still a unit that if you pick, you're going to be surprised how good she is on a slow fight team. You pick her into a team, you defend her really well with knights and weavers to support her, and you'll be surprised how many fights you can win with her. Now she is basically just a PvP unit. Most of her kit centers around her ability to seal, and you can't seal PvE units, so she is only going to really be used in RTA and maybe the occasional Guild War. You're not going to see this girl in Arena, not really. So just those two places. She is a floor boss though, so you can buy her imprints with gold transmit stones, and that's kind of nice. Eternal Wanderer Ludwig, if you just absolutely need something to be dead as quickly as possible, you're going to have a hard time finding a better cleaver than Eternal Wanderer Ludwig. He has got the unique aspect of he can soul burn his S1 for an attack buff, or he can soul burn his S2 for a skill null. He is the only unit I can think of that has soul burn on 2 separate skills, giving him technically a more diverse kit than just about anybody in the game. His biggest weakness is he is a glass cannon. He can blow things up and he can move really fast while doing it, but I mean, he's a kid, right? You can punch him in the face and he's going to run off crying because he's a kid, but he does at least have skill null on there, so he can take 1 hit to the face and probably live. The way you need to fight Ludwig is you need to have somebody that initiates him so he can take a turn and kill everybody before they try and kill him back, because if they live and can try to kill him back, they're probably going to succeed. Quintessential cleaver unit. He self-CR pushes every time somebody else soul burns, so he's very easy to initiate. He works great with Ran, with Peyra, especially good with Zio. Anybody who can soul burn an extra attack to push him up, and if you're scared about counterattacks ruining him, that's where Astromancer Elena comes into play. Outside of RTA, he doesn't really have many uses. Most things PvE related are going to be longer fights, and he just doesn't have the chops to survive it. But Guild Wars, RTA, and Arena, fan-freaking-tastic unit, and right beside him, a Cleaver's best friend, Requiem Rowana. Requiem Rowana is insane if you play fast, right? How she works is, whenever the front row unit on your team, that's the unit on your team that's closest to the enemy, whenever that unit takes a turn, Rowana takes a turn. So she doesn't even need speed. She can be the slowest unit on your team. She should be the slowest unit on your team because she's just going to move in conjunction with that front row unit. Now, when that front row unit dies, she stops moving, basically. So be very careful that your front row unit is not only fast, but something that's not going to die really, really quickly. Zeo is a great option there. Requiem Rowana can be built one of two ways, because look at her S3. Dispels a debuff, increases cooldowns, in other words, makes your enemy's skills unusable, and pushes the enemy back by 30%. So you can build her with like 250, 300 effectiveness, and just make sure that when she takes a turn, your enemy gets pushed back, and then when they do finally get to take a turn, they can only use S1s because their skills have been turned off, because you got enough effectiveness to turn off everybody. Or you can build her with just a ton of attack, because although she doesn't crit, she penetrates. So she can do a nuclear amount of damage if you build her with like 5 to 6k attack. Or you could go with a little bit of a hybrid, put a little bit of both in there. And she also calls you darling. How can you not want a smoking hot unit who calls you darling? Requiem Rowana, a Cleaver's best friend. If you can get this unit and you have somebody on your team that's fast, she can make PvP in the sense of RTA, even some Guild Wars, or even some Arena, and definitely in Guild Wars. She can make all those things so much more accessible. Outside of RTA, though she can do decent damage, she doesn't bring enough into the table for long, prolonged fights. Most cleave units don't work out so well in PvE because they're designed to get the fight over with quickly, and PvE is designed to not be over quickly, so less useful in PvE. Spectre Tenebria has been the best unit, the top of every tier list since the beginning of her initial buffs when they made her a monster. After she S3s, which does insane damage and can stun the enemy, and if it kills, it pushes the entire enemy team back. She can, after she's done that, her S1 hits 2 targets instead of just 1, delivering poison. She can soul burn and do multiple S1 attacks. And every time she attacks, she hits stronger and becomes tankier than the time before if you get her EE. She is the #1 most important unit to have for Abyss, for clearing Labyrinth content. She's got insanely high morale for camping. She's really, really good in Guild Wars. Though her usefulness in RTA has waned quite a bit, she is a unit that will win you fights in early RTA. If you just started the game, you pick this girl up from your Moonlight connection, hands down. There'll be a handful of people who say, no, Arby's better, get Arby now. Those people are not to be trusted. You always get Spectre Tenebria. Even when it's not Spectre Tenebria, it's still Spectre Tenebria. There's only one case where you would get Arby over Stenny, and that's if you are just doing this to get into RTA. You're hyper-focused, that's the only thing you're planning on, then sure. But if you want to do all the other aspects of the game, Stenny is necessary. You'll look up a guide for how to complete things and go, damn it, more Spectre Tenebria, I don't have that unit. It's very important you get this unit. So if you didn't pick her up from the Moonlight Connections and you get her here, be thrilled. If you get a second one here and you got it from Moonlight Connections, that sucks a little bit more. You could maybe build 2 different versions, maybe a Destruction Nuclear one and a Lifesteal one, but she's so heavily invested in Mola, I can't really recommend that. Most people I know that have 2 Spectre Tenebrias, they only ever use one of them. But very important unit, very worth picking up. Get her from your Moonlight Connection if you don't have her. Top model Lilica. Top model Lilica reminds me a lot of Faithless Lidica. She needs really, really, really high-end gear, and if you don't have it, she's not a real unit. Even when you have it, she's hard to use, right? She's designed to be an opener/bridge unit/DPS. She's a Jane of all trades, mistress of none, right? She does really good damage, but not quite enough. She's really, really fast, but not quite fast enough to outspeed the monsters that are out there right now. And if you try to force it, you try to make her fast enough to compete, then she's only a bridge. She's got not really enough damage to kill all but the squishiest units. If you build her with enough damage to actually be substantial damage, then she's not quite fast enough and you need a bridge unit, and you may as well bridge a real damage dealing unit that can do better damage than her. She's only really usable in PvP, Guild Wars and RTA, and even there her uses are very limited, and you likely don't have the gear to make her the way you want her to be if you're early to mid game. Your best bet with her is to take her and stick her in your storage for use down the road. Unfortunately for us, because she is such a gorgeous unit, and it's ironic, she was the most impactful unit of the year she came out, which I believe was 2020. She was the most impactful unit that year. She was everything bent to her will, but she's just been power crept out of the game, and Smilegate really needs to give her some little something to bring her back into the meta. Yay, Zeo, another floor boss, another free triple S if you use your gold transmit stones. If you get Zeo, you are ready to cleave. Zeo's got a special built-in passive where he gives himself a 20% CR boost at the start of the turn. What that means is whatever speed you build him at, multiply that by 1.2, and that's the speed the game will consider him. So you build him 270 speed, the game's going to treat him like it would treat a 324 speed unit at the start. That's why Zeo almost always goes first. You build over 165 speed, you're taking that first turn, and first turn is so important, especially because you can Soulburn as S3. Remember who pushes up from Soulburns? Ludwig. The enemy brings out a Ran, it's a 310 speed Ran, and you're like, how do I compete against a 310 speed Ran? Well, your 265 speed Zeo is going to outspeed that 210 speed Ran. And when he S3s that 210 speed Ran, he's going to CR push that Ran back and then silence him. So even if Ran does get a turn, he can't S3. It lets you take control of the fight. He's one of the most important aggro units for taking control of the tempo, and one of the easiest ways to get into cleave with being able to be an initiator or to be able to push back the speed unit on the opponent's team so that your initiator can take over the fight. Like say for example Zeo into Ice Flan, who soul burns because of the book on Zeo, and defense breaks the enemy team, and then pushes up your BBK, and then your enemy team just evaporates. And you still have a room for a fourth unit. Crazy. Crazy good unit for aggressive play, for Guild Wars, top tier. For Arena, top tier. For RTA, top tier. Not many uses in PvE. Though you can build them for some damage on them. You can even put them on lifesteal and take them into PvE. There are probably just better options for that. But once you get this unit, you are more than halfway to being ready to just rock it in RTA. Remember when I talked about Apocalypse Ravi being like the most dominating unit because she could flip the tempo of the team by killing one unit, and then one unit on your team comes back to life, so it's like a one-to-one trade out? Meet Blood Moon Haste, who does that, but it brings your entire team back. That's right, if Blood Moon Haste is the last person alive on your team, and he gets an S3 bite onto an enemy and kills that enemy, your whole ass team comes back to life. You want to talk about snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Plus, his S1 can go into an extra attack that can heal your whole team. He can be built giga tanky. When I tell you that if your unit's not very good, your unit's low down on the tier list, you're worried that the unit you pulled is trash, look to Blood Moon Haste. Blood Moon Haste was seen as, widely regarded as the worst ML5 in the game. The least usable, the most dated kit, the unit that just was not a good unit anymore, didn't really bring anything to the team. All he did was give everybody barriers when somebody died. Yay. I mean, he still does that. But then they gave him this raise trick as well, and the self-heal trick. They turned this guy from the bottom F tier of the meta to the tip top of the S tier of the meta with one balance patch. And that can happen overnight to any unit. So just because you get a bad unit doesn't mean it's going to be bad for long. So don't despair. Don't feel like quitting. Be upset in the moment. Grieve. Go through all your stages. But then realize that it won't be that way forever. Every unit has its day, just like Haste currently has his day. If you pulled Blood Moon Haste, congratulations on winning the game. PvE, PvP, everything. Any unit that can bring your whole ass team back to life, is hard to kill, and is a Soul Weaver who can heal your team, is good everywhere. He can make it so that that Abyss floor you're about to lose, now you suddenly win. That RTA fight you're about to lose, now you suddenly win. That Guild War and Arena fight, you get the picture. He's an I win button. So get this guy, build him well, give him some of your best gear, and absolutely murder people. And speaking of top of the meta, Death Dealer Ray. An entire ML5 unit was made to deal with how broken this ML5 unit was. ML Sharun's owes her entire existence to Death Dealer Ray, who is giga strong. He is the best control unit in the game. He can S3 and put your entire party to sleep, and then he gives a buff to your entire team that can't be dispelled, and while your units are wearing that buff, they become injury units. More so if they're on injury set. And and the way they become injury units is they start spamming a debuff called Plague. And when Death Dealer Ray gets a chance, he can S1 and detonate any Plague buffs on people. Get wrecked, HP Scalers. He will take HP Scalers max HP down to 50% in just a few rounds, and then nobody's killing anybody. The Doctor is in, and he will win you fights. Guild Wars, Arena, RTA, one of the strongest competitive units in the game. One of the hardest units to deal with. When somebody picks this guy, you spend the entire rest of your draft thinking about how to deal with him. No real use in PvE, and he does take a somewhat high level of gear to play effectively, but that's RTA units for you. If you're new to the game and you've picked up the Doctor, be glad that you've got such a powerhouse in your back pocket for when you're ready to get into competitive play. But early on, you probably won't reach for him that much. So there you go. No real tier list, just a quick little palaver to discuss all of the different units in the game. Hopefully this helps, gives you some perspective, makes you feel better about the ML5s that you pulled. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you got from your ML5 selector ticket, or if you're waiting for that 1 in 40-ish chance to pick up Harsetti. Yeah, dump it in the comments section. I really want to see who you guys picked, so let me know. If you have any questions, link to my Discord is in the description of the video. Go ahead and hit me up there, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great one, everybody. Take care.